Afternoon, everyone. Cold Case Project back again. Today, we're going to discuss the case of St. Louis Jane Doe, also known as Hope. They Now this case occurred in February 28th of 1983, and in a nutshell, all I can just say is very little information is truly they really have in this case. We don't know of any missing persons cases that could be connected to this. Pure speculation. It's pure speculation. A couple suspects are out there, but I mean, even as far as pictures go, there's really only a couple of pictures they have that really and truly go over this case. This is going to be a very, very graphic story. So, for those of you who just do not really like these types of stories, I would definitely recommend that you look for another video on my channel or any other video you could see suggested along the side. So, the story starts on February the 28th, 1983. It's a Monday morning, and two looters were going into this abandoned building at 5635 Clemens Avenue in St. Louis, Missouri. Now, they said they were looking for some car parts. They were going through this basement looking, and as they were just kind of picking up junk and garbage that was just discarded off in this vacant building, they came across a body. The guy lit a cigarette, looked down, and saw the body of a young girl. And thing that just definitely really just took over about the case is the young girl that was found was missing her head. It was done post-mortem. It did occur when they found the girl. This is the actual crime scene. You can actually see here her hands were tied behind her back. All she had on was this V-neck sweater, which was on her as well, too. And they got the authorities there. Police quickly were able to see that this was not, a prostitute. This wasn't a drug addict. This was a young girl. This was most likely a preteen girl. And while police, did news broadcasts try to share information about this young girl, nothing was coming in. They were getting really no solid clues. They had searched school records for every school in Missouri, and essentially every school was able to verify their students and, possibly, had someone gone missing. The future tests would show that the young girl that was found on Monday morning was most likely murdered February the 23rd, which would have been a Thursday, possibly sometime in the evening. They believe she was most likely killed. As to when she was dumped off, because they were able to tell that she was killed in a different spot than where she was found. As for when she was dropped off, there's really, really no evidence to really help try to come up with an answer to when that may have happened. All they really had was this picture of this girl with her wrists bound behind her and a blood-soaked sweater that she'd been wearing at the time she was murdered. Now, as 1983 would go on, they made more and more, press releases trying to figure out who, does anyone have any information, and nobody ever spoke. They really got no leads that helped them out along the way. And later on, in December of 1983, they actually buried her at the Calvary Cemetery, located in St. Louis, Missouri. Now, as time has gone on, they did do some tests on the body. Now, she did get lost, I believe in the 1990s, and they were trying to figure out where the body may have been. They did, thank God, found where she was located, and they had done some tests on her. With that said, that's how they figured out she most likely died on the 23rd of February. She was possibly born in 1972 in southeastern United States. Now, with that said, they believe she grew up in, by looking at water they believe she consumed, they believe she grew up in either Georgia, Mississippi, Arkansas, Texas, Florida, Louisiana, or North or South Carolina. Now, as for where she was living at the time of her death, these options and Illinois also do come into play, which I'm going to bring up a case that kind of just caught my eye and wanted to go over with you. Now, as for the victim, she was between either 4'10" to 5'6" in height. She had a medium to dark complexion. She had spina bifida, most likely not treated. No one really knew. No one knows, whether or not this was something that they were taking care of at the time. No scars, and she appeared to have been well nourished at the time she was found. Now, unfortunately, like I said, the picture of the sweater and the picture of the hands bound behind her back are legitimately the only real pictures that are shared with us. I don't know as if there's any additional photos. They'd obviously be a lot more graphic, but I don't know if there's anything else that they have in the community banks. Or obviously they probably have some stuff in police records they just can't share. But the evidence is so scarce with this one. Now, the only piece of evidence they really did have was the sweater. In 1986, a psychic contacted the St. Louis Police Department saying that they wanted to do kind of look at the shirt and try to get a reading from it. And the police decided to let the person actually have the sweater. Now, after they mailed the sweater out to this person in Florida, whether it was lost in mail, whether it went to a person who was connected to the case, nobody knows. And no trace of the sweater has ever been found or known whatever happened to it since. Now, who could do such a crime? Who could take a preteen girl and do what this monster did? Now, as years have gone on, Vernon Brown has been often thought of to be the most likely suspect. Now, at the time of in 1983 in this area, Vernon Brown lived, I believe from what I read, about 15 minutes. He lived 15 minutes away from where the body had been dumped off. Vernon Brown was a registered sex offender with multiple charges of rape and child molestation against him. Now, in 1986, Vernon Brown was sentenced to death for the murders of two young girls, Janet Perkins and Sinita Ford. Now, both of these girls were only 9 years old. Both had been sexually assaulted, both strangled. One of them had been stabbed with a knife. Don't really know if this was post-mortem. And both bodies were dumped off in vacant buildings in St. Louis, Missouri, in some of these areas. Now, sounds kind of like same MO, right? Sounds like this guy seems to be a predator of young girls. His victims are kind of all in this age range. But then, like we said, the a lot of people in Missouri, they looked over every school. There were the only victims linked to him were essentially, they were able to put X amount of victims on him, and they do believe he is a suspect in a lot of other um, sexual assaults and murders of young girls. However, he kept his silence on many of these other cases into his execution on May the 18th of 2005. So, does this potentially fit what he did? Yeah. Was he in the vicinity of where this happened? Yes. Um, but there was another guy. I wasn't able to really dig up any information on him, but there was another guy who was a registered sex offender in the St. Louis area. I tried to dig up some older information on the guy, but I really was not having any luck. He doesn't seem to have really the same amount of belief behind him that Vernon Brown, however, had, because most most case most of these case studies I'm looking at are just firmly saying that Vernon Brown is most likely your suspect. Um, with that said, though, I did want to throw kind of another theory out there, and this theory is to a man named Alton Coleman. Now, I produced a computerized video about Alton Coleman and his prostitute girlfriend Debbie Brown's murder spree in 1984, and um, this guy was a monster, just like Brown. He raped and murdered not just young girls, but adult women as well too, and men too. He was known to murder, and the rap sheet on this guy just is miles long. Um, Definitely a story of a young man just born into a horrible situation. He was born to a prostitute in Waukegan, Illinois, sometime in, I believe, the mid 1940s. He sexually assaulted at a young age. He was in and out of jail starting from his teen years. He was a convicted rapist as a teenager. And really, just every single year throughout the 1970s, he was in and out of jail. But in the Waukegan area, he was just able to get out. He a lot of some of these areas, regardless of how evil this person is, they just people just did not want to speak. People did not want to press charges, and now these allegations really didn't get too serious until the year prior, when Chicago police were questioning him for the rape and murder of a 15-year-old girl. Now, the next year, in 1983, he raped his 9-year-old niece. The child's family dropped all charges on him, and he also was the prime suspect in the rape and murder of a 9-year-old of a believe it was a preteen girl that he'd been. It was the daughter of a girl he was dating at the time that lived in Milwaukee. So he was a suspect in this case. Now, I know what you're saying. Waukegan, this is in Illinois, Missouri. Now, though far-fetched, Alton Coleman was a spree killer who dumped bodies. Even though he lived in Waukegan, He had dumped off bodies in Detroit, Michigan. He had dumped off bodies in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. One of his victims from Waukegan, he actually dumped into a vacant building in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He murdered in Gary, Indiana. He murdered in Cleveland, Ohio. He was just one of just the worst types of monsters. He was someone who went into black communities knowing that he could, he would sink in, and some people would look at him and be like, oh, he would come off as a nice, charming guy, which is what everyone who knew him was saying, that he had just a way with words, and he was almost just a natural salesman, and he was very charismatic, and people just, were brought into the guy. And unfortunately, this is how he lured in many of his victims throughout 1984, through 83, 84, and before that. He was, however, they finally captured him in 1984 with Debbie Brown, and they were charged, I believe, in three of the murders in their killing spree. And he was eventually executed, I believe, in 2004. So, could he have been a suspect in St. Louis Jane Doe? Now, like I said, this is kind of a stretch, but with the amount of evidence in this case, I feel anything is possibly a stretch where you're at this point. Now, the one case that really did kind of catch my eye was a girl by the name of Kelly Juanita Staples. Now, Kelly Juanita Staples had gone missing on January the 8th of 1980. All right, she would have been 6 years old. Now, where this girl gone missing, it's probably about a half hour to 40 minutes from Waukegan. Could this girl have been abducted by someone in this shady circle of people that Coleman knew, that Coleman socialized with? It's possible. Hey, listen, with crime, especially when you have the few amount of clues that you have, I mean, anything's possible, and any potential theory is something worth looking at. I've always thought to myself, like, now, Kelly Staples was last seen. She was walking to school at 73rd and Merrill that morning, and she never made it to class. Now, nothing's really known. A convicted killer who they just left as anonymous did say that he murdered her. However, he recanted his story. Now, like I said, could this potentially have been her? We don't know. This is, however, like I said, this is 3 years before this body was eventually found. So this person would have had to have been kidnapped with someone else, potentially someone who wouldn't want to say that, we have a missing child because they stole this child in the first place. The whole stance of this child, there's so little information as to where this child was taken from before they wound up in this vacant building in St. Louis, Missouri. And that really is, like I said, that's about it. She vanished in 1980 without a trace, and that's where you're at. Now, in 1983, February the 23rd, 1983 to be exact, the exact day they believe Hope Doe, St. Louis Jane Doe went missing. The exact day, Sharon Cole, she went missing from Manhattan, New York. Now, she wanted to go to the park, and she told her mom she was going to the park that night, and she never came home. Now, obviously, we're looking at a girl going missing in New York, and this body was found in Missouri. So most likely this is a far stretch here, and plus we really don't know if Miss Cole if Sharon Cole was ever lived in Georgia or Arkansas or Texas or Florida or any of these other states. So, we don't know, but at the same time, any potential lead is something, especially with this what happened to these children. Um, Now, there's a couple other cases. I couldn't dig up any information on these, but if you want to look into these yourself, there is the case of Beverly Ward. There's Sherry Truesdale, Sheila Quinn, Sharice McGee, Toya Hill, Shonda Green, Talitha Good, and Johanna Sir. Now, these are disappearances that have been said they don't believe they could be Hope Doe. However, like I said, there's no actual evidence, so it's really, really difficult to say whether or not one of these can truly be written off. So, I mean, I said a few of these, like I said, you're looking at a case where, like Kelly Staples, they went missing, a couple of years before the disappearance had even happened. So, some of these are just a stretch, but once again, this is just it's a tragic case in every way, shape, and form. So let's just pray that one day, hopefully, that they can close the doors on this. So one of these, whoever the poor angel was who lost her life in February 1983, can get the name she deserves. And I believe most likely the person who did this is most likely probably been executed. Um, Brown, granted, like I said, I threw Coleman out there, but all signs kind of point that it was the type of crime and MO of Vernon Brown. Um, let's hope that the person who did this definitely got what's coming to them, and that this angel gets their name, and they at least get that. So, like I said, it's definitely a disappointing video. I know that that's really where a lot of the content goes with this, but I did want to say thank you for tuning in. If we have any requests, I love putting out content. I love doing research. So, if you can think of a case that you would like to see me cover, let me know. Just throw me a comment. Leave a like, leave a subscribe. Any little bit helps. Greatly appreciated. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay tuned for absolutely more content. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Peace.